guys. As I've stated before, I am a caregiver now for my grandmother, and sometimes I just wake up and I want to get out the house, or I feel like I need to get away. But it's like 6:30 a.m. and I wanted to go to Starbucks. But as I was walking, I saw the ducks and I wanted to feed them because I kept saying to myself that I wanted to do that. I went to Walmart, got the seedless grapes and the lettuce, and I was so busy trying to take a picture of it for the video that I forgot to get my $20 cash back. So I'm gonna have to basically read the synopses of these books for you, and then I'm gonna go back to Walmart to see if they'll give me my $20. I know it's my fault because I didn't look. Like, I forgot that early because I just woke up, but I need to go back and get my money. But so yeah, that's the kind of day that I'm having. First of all, when I went to the library a few days ago, the Cesar Chavez one, they said that they were going to be reconstructing and they're going to be closed for 3 years. 3 years is a long time to be closed, so I don't even know if there will be a library after that, if they are going to turn the new building into a library. But at least I was able to check these 3 out, and then after I'm done reading these books, I'll probably go to the Troche library. But so that's the kind of day that I'm having. Cesar Chavez is being closed temporarily, but it's a long ass temporarily. I'm on my cycle. I got to get back home before 8 so I could do my grandma's vitals, and I also got to go back to Walmart to get my cash back. So this is what happens when you just wake up and you're not alert, but also when you're doing too many things at once. But like I've been doing recently, I am going to have chapters in the video. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to, talk about how I discovered the books, and I'm going to timestamp each 3 of these synopses, but I'm just going to go ahead and read all 3 of them at once. And then I'm just going to be having footage and montages of me reading these books throughout the days, the next few weeks, and then, I'll give you guys updates and then my final thoughts on the books, unless I didn't like it to the point to where we got to the DNF zone. And my plan was to just stay at Starbucks for a little bit and then have some footage of me reading right now, but I think it would be better sooner rather than later to try to get my $20 back. So that's what I'm going to try to do. But I got myself a venti chai latte and a chocolate croissant today. I actually have it in like the opposite order of how I want to read these. I also checked out Saga Volume 4, and I finished that within 2 days because it's just a small graphic novel. But Saga is going to have like 15 volumes, and I've read up to Volume 4, and I do really love Saga. It's probably one of the most imaginative series or graphic novels that I've ever read. So I think I will be hauling that one soon. But this is the order of which I want to read everything. The first book that I got was Detransition, Baby. This is by Tori Peters. So I think this book was very popular around the same time as Uncanny Valley by Otesha Moshbe and also Milk Fed by Melissa Broder were very popular contemporaries around the time that this came out. So when Detransition Baby, I think this was a debut book too, when Detransition Baby came out, I didn't know how to feel about it because as far as I know, this is about like a trans masculine person that obviously transitioned, but they want to transition back, I think. I don't know. The synopsis really was hard for me to understand when I first discovered this book, so that's why I steered away from it. But and also, I wasn't really sure how to feel about this book because I wasn't sure if it was own voices. Like, I didn't want to read a contemporary expose about trans people being doubtful about their transition if it wasn't an own voices book. Okay, so I literally just came home and walked through the back door, but what happened since then, I had to pause reading the synopsis because, yeah, this is my fault too. I was facing the door, but you can really see the door of Starbucks in the background. But like, as I was talking, there were two guys that were having a conversation. The conversation was brief, but they were like right in my video footage. And then it was just like too loud and I was getting overstimulated. So I decided to try to hurry up and go to Walmart to get my money back. But they're like, it's not our responsibility. Once you get the cash back, it's kind of your fault. They were nice about it, but they were like, it's kind of your fault, which is true. And I'm not a silver liner, but I'm just trying to transmute my energy. It could have been worse. I could have taken $40 cash back. There have been times when my mom took $100 cash back and then she forgot it. So it could have been worse, but it's like, I started thinking about how it's been so hard for me to gain a following on both of my channels, and I'm working so hard to try to get monetized. And again, I caregive for my grandmother, and everyone who I tell, like strangers who I tell, they're like, I couldn't do it, or there's so many people that testify to their own family not wanting to do it for their people. And just the fact that I get taken for granted. And I try so hard to do the right thing all the time and to get my money up, and then stuff like this happens, and it'll be little small inconveniences, but sometimes it can really get you down. So I was just kind of beating myself up for that, but also trying not to think about it too much. And as I was walking home, I saw a Walmart receipt on the ground, and I picked it up and I scanned it. There was ants all over it, and I wouldn't normally do this, but I picked it up and I scanned it because I'm like, if I drop my receipt, if I couldn't get my $20 cash back, let me at least try to rack up my points on Fetch. So I believe in karma, and I also believe in, like an oracle card says in one of my favorite oracle card decks, when you serve, the universe serves you. So I look at it as like, I dropped my receipt, but then I found another Walmart receipt. Isn't that crazy? And I am trying to manifest myself getting $20 or more by the end of this day. Sometimes family members will give me money unexpectedly, but the thing about manifesting is, like, in order to get what you want, you set the intention and then you don't dwell on it. So if I don't manifest $20 or more by the end of today, by the time I get to the end of these 3 books in the reading vlog, watch and see, I might manifest $20 or more. And if I do, that'll really teach you guys something. It'll really be a testimony for you. But I walked home, and then I dropped the seedless grapes and the lettuce over the gate. And I didn't see any geese or any ducks when I did that. But I'm pretty sure if I drive past it, or if I walk past it again, because I might run errands with my mom today, it's probably going to be gone. And I decided to give them butter lettuce, not iceberg lettuce, because iceberg lettuce is shit. It doesn't taste like anything, and it has no nutritional value. Yeah, and also after I found the receipt, there was a lady, I guess she could tell that I was kind of feeling sad, and she smiled at me. And it was a very quick interaction, but that kind of made me feel a little bit better too. And you'll notice that once you change your mindset, everything around you changes too. But I'm just praying that I'll have an easy day today, and my day will get better, and I can manifest more money. And it just goes to show you, not that I'm perfect, like, there really are different vibrations and intentions in the world. I had the mindset to get up today and do something selfless by feeding the ducks or the geese. Somebody else has a mindset like they wanted to take instead of giving. So that's the world that we live in. But I also kind of feel like, even if I don't love all of these books, I think that the books themselves, this is going to be a really good reading vlog. So it's kind of like, sometimes good needs to be balanced out by bad. Not that it justifies the bad, but anyway. So that's my little intermission. I'm going to go right back into reading the synopsis, and then I'm going to start my day. And I'll probably won't have time to actually read this and give you guys footage of that until really late tonight. Okay, but back where I left off. Reese almost had it all: a loving relationship with Amy, an apartment in New York City, a job she didn't hate. She had scraped together what previous generations of trans women could only dream of: a life of mundane, bourgeois comforts. The only thing missing was a child, but then her girlfriend Amy detransitioned and became Ames. and everything fell apart. Now Reese is caught in a self-destructive pattern, avoiding her loneliness by sleeping with married men. Ames isn't happy either. He thought detransitioning to live as a man would make life easier, but that decision cost him his relationship with Reese, and losing her meant losing his own family. Even though their romance is over, he longs to find a way back to her. When Ames's boss and lover, Katrina, reveals that she's pregnant with his baby and that she's not sure... Wait a minute. When Ames's boss and lover, Katrina, reveals that she's pregnant with his baby and that she's not sure whether she wants to keep it, Ames wonders if this is the chance he's been waiting for. Could the three of them form some kind of unconventional family and raise the baby together? This provocative debut is about what happens at the emotional, messy, vulnerable corners of womanhood that platitudes and good intentions can't reach. Tori Peters brilliantly and fearlessly navigates the most dangerous taboos around gender, sex, and relationships, gifting us a thrillingly original, witty, and deeply moving novel. Okay, so I just want to say that the concept of transgender people scares people already. It confuses people already. And that's why I'm kind of confused by this synopsis, even though it's very intriguing to me, because is this saying what I just read, that Ames and Reese were two trans women at first, and then Ames transitioned back to a man? I don't know what detransition means, but I'll try to include a definition of it. But it seems like this book is going to talk a lot about sapphic connections. It seems like a lot of trans authors are writing like lesbian trans relationships. So maybe that's all very common, but still I think that trans women get more representation than trans men. But I've been on this thing with like trans reputation, or I've been on this thing with trans representation recently, and it's because one of my exes is a trans masculine, meaning he was born female and then he transitioned to a man. So even though we're no longer together and we have a long, really chaotic history, some people will just forever touch your heart, even if they break it. So it's like every time I see trans representation, whether it's male, female, or there's other ways to be trans, I always think about him. And whenever I hear like really bigoted Republican news about people hating trans people, I always think about him. Like, is he safe? Is he okay? How does he feel right now? So that's why I've been really big on putting trans books on my TBR, regardless of what kind of trans it is. But I like how this book, it's not only talking about like multiple queer representations at the same time, maybe sapphic, maybe bi or pan, trans women being with other trans women, or trans women being with other cisgendered people, or whatever, polyamory. Not all Own Voices books are good, but I feel like it takes in a trans writer to even be able to be bold enough and ballsy enough, no pun intended, to tackle something like this. So I'm excited too, because another thing that I think about, and I'm just venting, or I'm just, giving you guys my honest thoughts of what my personal life is like. As someone who identifies as non-binary, but I'm assigned female at birth, and I'm mostly feminine, and I'm pansexual, so I might end up, who knows who I'll end up with, but I want a masculine partner. Sometimes I think about things like, okay, what does a non-binary motherhood look like for someone like me? And also, let's say, even if I don't end up with my ex, one thing I learned about myself is I really like trans masculine men, especially Black trans masculine men. Let's say I don't end up with my ex, but I end up with another Black trans masculine man. So what is that family dynamic gonna be like, to have two gender non-conforming parents, but it's still male and female? What is raising that child gonna be like? And the thing is, when you love someone unconditionally, sorry, I just got an Instagram notification. The thing is, when you love someone unconditionally, you try to figure that out as it goes. Like, yes, it's scary. There are going to be people who think that your family unit is not going to work because it's not traditional. But I feel like this book, even if I don't like it, is going to have a lot to say. Next is a book that I saw Meg from Reading with Meg talk about, but she used to read a lot of extreme horror and she loves transgressive fiction. So she's a Scorpio too, and Scorpios are into like macabre things. So she likes to read edgy things, and she's more prone to read about serial killers than the victims of serial killers. And fair enough, she was like, there's a reason why people obsess over the killers more, because it's more interesting. But Bright Young Women by Jessica Knoll was something that I think it was like a Goodreads choice, or this was a book that was very popular a few years ago too. And as far as I know, it's basically about like these college women that try to, I don't know if it's really like a sleuth mystery, but it's like these college women that are trying to protect themselves from a serial killer, or they're investigating or something like that. But here's the synopsis for this one. From the mega best-selling author of Luckiest Girl Alive comes a remarkable story inspired by the real-life sorority targeted by America's first celebrity serial killer. Okay, so it is based off of real life. That's what I wasn't sure about. That's interesting. January 15th, 1978 is a night of promise. A serial killer's escape in Aspen, Colorado couldn't be further from the minds of the busy young women at the top sorority on Florida State University's campus in Tallahassee. Sorority president Pamela Shoemaker spends her Saturday night glued to her desk, cradling her textbook like a pillow. Startled awake at 3 a.m. by a strange sound, she makes the fateful decision to investigate. What she finds outside her bedroom door is a scene of implausible violence. 2 of her sisters dead, 2 others maimed. It is the final murderous spree of the man the papers will soon dub the all-American sex killer. But Pamela doesn't know this yet, nor does she know the story of 25-year-old Ruth Wachowski, who 4 years earlier disappeared from Seattle's Lake Sammamish State Park in broad daylight, confounding police and shattering Ruth's roommate and best friend, Tina Cannon. When the massacre at the Tallahassee sorority house becomes national news, Tina is certain it is the work of the same man who terrorized the Seattle area 4 years prior. She rushes to Florida on a collision course with Pamela and one last impending tragedy. Bright Young Woman is the story of 2 women who demanded answers to questions nobody else would ask. What happened to Ruth the day she went missing? And how did a serial killer from the Pacific Northwest set his sights on a sorority house in Florida? Toggling between those nightmarish days. Oh, damn, this is a long synopsis. It's one of those ones that goes on both sides of the book jacket. In 1978, in a letter that brings Pamela and Tina together in the present, the astonishing truth is revealed, along with a portrait of the extraordinary woman who saw past the media's glorification of the Kennedy of killers, who he really was. Okay, so first of all, my first thoughts about this book is, I noticed that a lot of books that are targeted towards women or feminist-like books have the color pink in it. And there's one booktuber, Darkest Hour Reads, I think. She did a video that talked about that. So if I can find it, I'll put it in the description. But also, a lot of people have rainbow shelves, even if they're not queer. I've always wanted to have like a pansexual shelf, which is pink, yellow, and turquoise. So if I do like this book, this might go on display on my pansexual shelf. But one book that I watched the movie for last year was Silence of the Lambs. And even though Silence of the Lambs had some subtle transphobia stuff in it, that was one of the books that originally created there was a serial killer in the past, and now there's a serial killer who might possibly be a mimic serial killer, or is it the same guy trope, or the same person trope? So I've discovered that I find that trope to be very interesting, even though I don't think I've fully read a book that had that trope in it. So I'm excited to read Bright Young Women. So that's going to be what I read after Transition Baby, or Detransition Baby. And then we also have another Brandon Taylor, Minor Black Figures. I'm saving this one for last because I've only read Filthy Animals by Brandon Taylor, and even though I beefed with some of the characters in that story collection, it really spoke to me, and I really kind of fell in love with Brandon Taylor's writing and the way how he writes his prose. So out of all of his other books, this is the one that I felt was the most interesting. And I have to be honest, this wasn't like immediate on my TBR, but I was looking in my TBR jars, and then I just decided to see if this one was at Cesar Chavez Library. So I think I am going to go ahead and try to get this one out the way. But it says, a bold novel about a black man caught up in the currents of art, faith, and desire. New York simmers with heat and unrest as Wyeth, a painter, finds himself at an impasse in his own work. After attending a dubious show put on by a collective of careerist artists, he retreats to a bar in the West Village where he meets Keating, a former seminarian. Over the long summer, as the two get to know each other, they talk and argue about God, sex, and art. Meanwhile, at his job working for an art restorer, Wyeth begins to investigate the life and career of a forgotten minor black artist. And it's not in quotations, but I put it in quotations. His search yields potential answers to questions that Wyeth is only now beginning to ask about what it means to be a black artist making black art amid the mess and beauty of life itself. As he did so brilliantly in the Booker Prize finalist Real Life and the best-selling The Late Americans, Brandon Taylor brings alive a captivating set of characters, this time at work and at play in the competitive art world. Minor Black Figures is a vividly etched portrait, both sweeping and tender, of friendship, creativity, belief, and the deep connections between them. Okay, so yeah, The Late Americans was another one by him that I'm kind of interested in reading. I tried an audiobook sample of Real Life, and I even picked it up from Troche Library once, and I wasn't really interested. But talk and argue about God, sex, and art, those are things that I am interested in talking about all the time, all day, every day. So that alone is interesting. And this idea of any subject matter that you can think of, whether it's in school or outside of school, everything that we've ever been presented has mostly been white. And so when you're marginalized, you're not a minority because there's less of you. It's not like there's less disabled people than able-bodied people, less black people than white people, even though that statistic might be true in America because of the death rate for black people in many different ways. It's not necessarily true that there are more men than women in certain places of the world, but people are called minorities because they're treated as less, not because we are outnumbered or anything like that. So when it comes to things like anything that has to do with the art world, who do we see? Who do we celebrate? We celebrate people like Salvador Dali. We celebrate people like Van Gogh, Monet, all of the major people that you can name in art, whether it's filmmakers, actual painters, writers. When you go to places like Target and Walmart, what do you mostly see? Who are the people who are getting published? It's like you see whiteness represented and prioritized over everything. When you are a minority, specifically black, because the book is called Minor Black Figures, you had so much to contribute, past, present, and future, to society, but you're always going to be pushed to the background, or people have to do deep dives in order to find you. So I'm fascinated with the premise of this book because I feel like Brandon Taylor is going to say some very important things about how minor black figures are actually a lot more important and soulful than people will give them credit for. I think Brandon Taylor is a gay man, and Brandon Taylor, in a lot of his books, they kind of all have this theme of sexual desire, black and white interracial relationships, risque things involving sex, and a lot of gay relationships, but queerness in general. So I feel like Brandon Taylor is definitely a writer that delivers when it comes to these subject matters. So even though I'm not necessarily super excited to read this book right now, even though it is on my TBR, I have a feeling that this one is going to give me goosebumps, and this one is going to be very well and highly quotable. That's the only thing about getting books from the library, is you can't really annotate them, and I don't annotate everything, but I'm gonna start with Detransition, baby. I don't know, I can't really say where I'm gonna get to a stopping point. I'm just gonna keep on reading until, I don't know, maybe I'll do like 1/3, 1/2 the end of each one of these books and tell you how I feel. But if I DNF a book, then obviously I'm just gonna move on to the next one. But hopefully I won't have any more than one DNF when it comes to this reading vlog. Before I start my day, I also want to show you guys these two totes that I got from Cesar Chavez Library because they are closing, and I am glad that I did get some merch before that happened. But so a few years ago, I got this book from Five Below called What's Your Aura? And I took the quiz and I found out that I have a green aura and a blue aura, which is why sometimes that's why you'll see in my thumbnails I'll have like a green or blue outline. It's because those are my aura colors. People with green auras are usually very intelligent, but also have big heart chakras activation. And then people with blue auras are usually empaths. And I think that makes sense because Earth is represented by green, water is represented by blue. My sun sign is Cancer, my moon sign is Virgo. So like the blue and green, the water and earth energy, it just makes sense with me. But I got the same tote. I got one in like this cobalt blue color. And I think they were like $3 or $5, I don't remember. And then I got another one. I already had one in this color, but I rebought it because it was very raggedy. So I literally have to use these totes for books only, because when I put anything that's liquid in it or anything that spills, I'm gonna want to wash it, and the material gets absolutely shredded when you wash it and put it in the dryer. So I really have to just keep books only in those totes. But yeah, support your local library, support thrift stores. Honestly, I might even, when I run errands with my mom today, going to Trader Joe's or whatever, I might even want to run into Hope Chest or maybe Friends of the Stockton Library to see if they have any new books there. Because I'm broke and I feel kind of a little bit discouraged, and I also really need to do a book haul. So I don't know if I should just do something for myself today and do that, but I will begin reading Detransition Baby later tonight. So I'll see you guys then. As you can probably tell, because I'm gonna be sweating, it is very hot outside. It's 90 degrees, but I am exactly 50% into Detransition Baby. So I did basically, is this the first 2 chapters or the first 3 chapters? Let me see. Okay, so I read the first 2 chapters, which were pretty long, actually. The first chapter, I think, was like 44 pages, so that's about like 1/6 or 1/5 into the book. My experience with reading it physically was not that bad. It's just that I just got off of my menstrual cycle, and for the past few days, I have been feeling like tired or moody, so I don't always have the energy to physically read, which is why I decided to go back and forth between Hoopla and Libby to see if the 3 books that I'm reading for this vlog are there. So it turns out Detransition Baby and Bright Young Women are both on Libby, but I have to physically read Minor Black Figures. I have a lot of thoughts, and I'm actually surprised that I got to the 50% mark this fast, and also the fact that I got to the 50% mark at all, because this book is not for everybody, but I can definitely see why it was so hyped the year that it came out. Okay, so I have some notes on this little sticky pad sheet here, but yesterday I didn't write any notes, but these are my thoughts so far, and I'm gonna say some more things on top of this probably. Okay, so my first thing that I wrote is I didn't understand the concept of detransition because I've never heard that before. But if you were kind of confused by the synopsis too, so basically Reese is a fully transitioned trans woman, Ames was assigned male at birth, but then they kind of experimented with it, but they didn't like, they kind of dabbled in it, but then they stepped away. So Reese and Ames, they have a lot of beef with each other, or at least Reese as a character has a lot of beef with everybody, honestly. Mostly Ames and Katrina. So I'm going to explain this love triangle slash poly triad. This book is like so, it's so deep, and it takes so much intellectual gymnastics to try to understand this book, and that's one reason why I feel like it's not for everybody, but it is definitely interesting. If I made it to the 50% mark, even if I don't like everything about the book, that is usually an indicator that's pretty good. So Reese kind of taught Ames or Amy, and the book does kind of go back and forth between using Amy and Ames. That can be confusing, but it's the same person, because this book is told in an order that's not chronological. And at first, I didn't know how to feel about that, but I'm at the point now where everything's starting to make sense. And I'm glad that this book is told not in chronological order. I feel like it's been a while since I've used Goodreads because I deleted my account, but I feel like most of the people that have tried to read Detransition Baby and didn't like it, I'm pretty sure they DNF'd pretty early in the book, because some people might find the writing to be pretentious. I think it's still accessible, but it causes you to use mental gymnastics. Some people probably DNF the book early because they thought that the writing was pretentious, or when we first are introduced Reese, we are given a lot of reasons not to like her character, but as we learn the backstories of Reese and Ames, why their relationship didn't work out in the past, we learn the characters' desires, their fears, their struggles, their flaws, and I like how that means that there's probably going to be character development in this book. I'm kind of getting the vibes that this is not going to be like a 100% happy ending, but more so like a realistic ending. But I feel like there will be a lot of character development. And just like what I said in my review of Dominion by Addie C. Kitchens, you get to a point in the book where the characters who you don't like, then you start feeling sad for them, and the characters who you put on a pedestal or who you thought could do no wrong, then you realize that they're not as perfect as other people perceive them to be. So I do like that. I will say that, like, every time Reese gives me a reason for me to start liking her character, then she'll go do something that's just like really petty or really mean towards other trans women, or just like self-sabotaging behavior. One thing about Reese as a characteristic, she literally picks the worst men to have sexcapades with. But you learn basically, because Reese, even though she tries to come off as, oh, I've been out for a while, I'm just so sensual, I'm such like the ideal white trans woman, you can still see, especially when we learn about her past, how she settles for people who fetishize her because she doesn't feel like she deserves anything else. And that's why Reese has such a problem with Ames, and this is really a petty thing for her to be mad about. Reese was mad at Ames in the beginning of the book because she's triggered by men. She's mad at Ames for detransitioning or not fully going out with the trans woman thing. And in the LGBT plus community, I have heard and seen that lesbians, for example, don't like trans men, or a lot of lesbians in general just don't like men. So that's where a lot of Reese's animosity comes from. But then you look at Ames, who is the type of character, again, the book goes back and forth between Ames's pronouns. Let's just say they. Ames is not like a Mary Sue character, but they literally, when it comes to knowing that Reese always wanted to have a child, but Ames got somebody pregnant, wants to see how Reese feels about it. Ames wants to see how Katrina feels about it, trying to be the pacifist, trying to make sure all three of them have a redemption or a found family arc. Ames is really adorable as a character, whether we're seeing their masculine detransition self in the chapter snippets, or if we're going back to Ames failing or trying to come out as a trans woman. Ames, I would say, is a character that's very easy to like. Reese and Katrina, they have to grow on you, but overall, I love it because it's reminding me a lot of Brandon Taylor. Brandon Taylor writes annoying, lustful, shitty characters, but the way how he describes the messiness and the beauty of adult human contemporary life, it's the story and it's the complexity of it that will draw you in. So if you just like lit fic in general, even if you're not like a super huge queer lit person, you might like Detransition Baby. I like it so far. It is a book that will kind of make your head hurt by all of the didactic and the queer slang and culture and just like the transplaining things, or just like seeing how the characters interact and then the jumping timelines. But overall, I feel like the book is written very well. It's just on that border of like new, pretentious kind of like contemporary writing and unaccessible. So it's kind of like in the middle between like lofty and accessible. So it's really not going to be for everybody. I just put, damn, Reese is very defensive all the time. She softens up at the 50% mark. I am seeing her change or be more vulnerable. We love characters who have depth. Even if you don't like them, it's better to have a character that you don't like who has a backstory or who has depth than a character who you do like, but they're one-dimensional. I also just put in general, like the concept of detransition is interesting. And basically we have a polytriad of 3 women. One is all the way trans, one is basically trans in spirit but performs masculinity, and then the other one is a cisgendered woman. But it's like, I think that Tori Peters did that on purpose so we can see like the different aspects of womanhood and unity. I think that's like a big thing. And I feel like Reese is the type of character, she's written in a way that isn't necessarily Tori Peters dumping her feelings about her trans experience into the character, but rather using Reese as kind of like an antithesis for what unity in the specific community looks like. Yeah, and like I said, I've never heard of the word detransition, so I just felt like it was an interesting concept to do. One of the synopses, or something in the synopsis, or one of the blurbs said that Tori Peters like literally takes every trope that you can think of that's edgy and puts it in this book. But it doesn't, surprisingly, it doesn't feel like she's trying too hard though, in my opinion. So that's why I really like it. This is my hot take, but it's not like an angry hot take. I absolutely love sex in books, especially if it is something that is not traditional, that is not talked about. This book, if you are asexual or if you blush easily when it comes to descriptions of exactly, explicitly how people have to have sex, especially queer people, this book is going to make you uncomfortable too with that. But I really liked how it was like, it's exploring those themes a lot, but it's more to this book than just sex and gender. There's a lot of family aspect, or like forgiveness, or what true love is in general, self-love. Um, yeah, and then I kind of talked about how like Reese has this she has this friend, I don't remember what her friend's name, but it's like her and her friend, they like to go to a lot of trans lady picnics, and they're kind of like older. In the beginning of the book, Reese says like trans years are kind of like dog years, where even if you're really young, like in your, I think Reese is like in her mid or late 20s, she says trans years are like dog years. So even if you're really young but you've been out longer than other trans people, you kind of have like a sense of entitlement. So sometimes Reese and like her best friend that she likes to be with, they like to be in a circle amongst other trans women, or they like to go to places like clubs because they like attention, they like validation, but they also feel disgusted being around people in their community that remind them of them. And this is one of those instances where people really need to read outside of their representations and their comfort zones, because the concept of hate within your community is something that anybody can understand. Black people can understand that, white people can understand that, Asians, Hispanic, straight, white, men, women, anybody can understand that as a concept. So even if the characters are not your representations, this is what literary fiction and contemporary is supposed to do. It's supposed to make you think about the human experience. And sometimes you need opposition to show you things about yourself, and it can still be a mirror into things about you. I had 2 pages. This book is also very quotable. There's like, it's not necessarily flowery, but there's quotable things damn near on every page. I wrote a note on page 59 and page 61. So let me see. Let me see. Okay, this is page 59. Reese wanted to end their games to get hit in a way that would affirm once and for all what she wanted to feel about her womanhood, her delicacy, her helplessness, her infuriating attractiveness. After all, every woman adores a fascist. Reese spent a lifetime observing cis women confirm their genders through male violence. Watch any movie on the Lifetime channel, go to any schoolyard, or just watch your local heterosexuals drinking in a bar. Here, women define themselves through pain or rage against the assumption that they do, which still places pain front and center. Hear the strange sense of satisfaction when they talk about the men who have hurt them, the unspoken subtext of it being because I am a woman. So that was very deep. Me being a queer person myself, and this is something that I'm still getting used to as an ideology. I'm not perfect. It's not like I don't have internalized disgust with myself or anything like that I'm still trying to heal. But when it comes to trans people specifically, some people are very, I'm always going to see a trans woman as a man wearing a dress, or I'm always going to see a trans man as a woman cosplaying as a man. But Reese talking about her observances of understanding deep things about the gender of being female by watching cisgender women, and with her commentary being 100% on point, for me that solidified the concept that trans women are just women. Literally, they do count as being women, and they do understand what it's like to be women, whether through observance or mimicking or trying to be that or whatever you want to call it. They still understand that. And I thought about that. That was one of the quotes or the paragraphs in this book so far that has really made me think, like, yeah, you know what, women really do define ourselves as women by hurt. You know, people say beauty is pain. We go to the gym to look good for men. We scorch our hair to look good for men. Sometimes we have painful sex for men. So it's some, and you know, the statistics of women, cis, trans, whatever, being assaulted, it's like so much of being woman is being brutalized or experiencing violence. Like, proof that you are delicate is proof that you are a woman. That's basically what Reese was saying. And she has a lot of inner monologues of, and I really like how it took like a trans woman to see like the balance between, yes, I really love being this gender, yes, I like this gender, but it's not in a Silence of the Lambs way where it's like I'm just jealous of cis women. It's, no, I identify as a woman, but I also know that there's cons to it. But even still, I still like this identity, which I think is very interesting. Where was the... Okay, I don't know why I marked page 61, but there's also like a section in the book in the beginning where Reese is like, all women have the Sex in the City problem. And I've never watched that show, but she was like, basically, the only ways that you can save yourself are by getting a man through one character, having an education and being single through another character, or becoming pregnant. Those are the only ways that you're seen as being a woman, a value in society, or like literally getting yourself out of the rut that is being a female. And I'm like, damn, that hits so hard. And if a trans woman can say that about womanhood and know exactly what a lot of us are thinking deep down inside, then they have the right to be included in our spaces as well. But anyway, yeah, I have a lot to say about Detransition, baby. I really do like it. And here's the thing about... Okay, the word sloppy just came into mind, but here's the thing about like sloppy or uncomfortable contemporary and literary fiction. You don't have to like the characters, you don't have to agree with everything in the book, but if you set the book down... I'm not even finished with the book, I'm at the 50% mark. And I'm still thinking about all of the quotable conversations that have happened so far in this book. So when you do that while you're still reading the book, or even after you put the book down, that's how you know a book is good. Because I'm still thinking about Filthy Animals by Brandon Taylor. And I feel like maybe Tori Peters is going to be another one of my insta-buy or almost insta-buy all of the time literary fiction writers. So I'm going to catch up with you guys when I finish Detransition, baby. I have about 6 hours, 5 something minutes, hours left of the audiobook. I'm feeling kind of lazy, kind of unmotivated today. So I don't know if I'm just going to spend the rest of my day listening to this audiobook as I lay down until some of my favorite tarot readers post. But I might be able to finish this book today, get back with you tomorrow morning, and then start Young Bright Women. But when it comes to the other 2 books, I'm going to catch up with you at the 50% mark, or whenever I DNF it, if it's before, after, and obviously when I finish it. And the last thing that I'm going to do for this video is I'm going to tell you guys my overall thoughts, which book I felt like was rated the highest, and what my next video ideas might possibly be. So when I got to the second half of Detransition, baby, I don't really remember anything new to add on to the conversations that I already had about the book. But it was just, the stakes got higher. We learn more and more about the characters' past, and then things get more tense when it comes to their future. When it comes to the ending of the book, I guess I was a little bit dissatisfied, but the ending actually makes sense. The reason why I was dissatisfied is because it wasn't a 100% happy ending, which I kind of predicted that it wouldn't be that way, but I feel like it's realistic and I respect that. Overall, I think I really enjoyed Detransition, baby. Not sure whether or not I want to buy a physical copy for myself, but I appreciate all the conversations that were in the book. Like I said, the only negatives, or the only things that you really have to be aware of if you want to read this book, is that it has a lot for you to take in, whether it's gender study type things, the character slang, or just all the drama that happens in the book. It's a lot to take in, but I still feel like overall it was a really great book, and I'm glad that I finally read it. The sun is almost setting, but I do want to show you that I have reached the 50% mark. I think in Detransition, baby, I reached the 50% mark faster than I thought it would too. But I have been listening to it on Libby. I do think that I'm not going to DNF it, but I probably will speed up the listening speed because I do kind of want to get on with it. So my thoughts so far: I feel like Detransition, baby, was overstimulating, and Bright Young Women is understimulating. So far, I mean, the writing's not terrible. It's just like it doesn't really leave much of an impression on me. The main character, a lot of her dialogue, or a lot of her narration in the book is, I did this and I did this. I guess she's the I'm not gonna peek into the synopsis, but you know how they have sororities and then there's like the main person who's the head of the sorority? So she kind of has like this leader role. And this book is very on the nose with the feminist didactic of, oh yeah, I was here during the funeral and I feel this way about men and I did this and I did that. So it's very obvious that the author is trying to write the main character, the main narrator, as someone who is like a strong heroine, and it's just kind of annoying. And some books are very successful with that type of energy. Like when I was younger, I loved the Hunger Games series, but now that I'm older, I've kind of changed my mind about Katniss. And was another book or series that kind of had that energy. I haven't read ACOTAR yet. I'm really on the fence about whether or not I want to, not because it's popular, but because I'm interested in the book, because it's kind of like Beauty and the Beast, and that's one of my favorite Disney movies. But Akatar is kind of like the same energy, where it's like main female character is written in a very strong, like, I can do this, I can do that, and it's supposed to be empowering, but it's really just like too on the nose. And obviously, if you are marketing a book like this to feminist people or to people who want to read about bright young women, they already know what they're in for. So you don't have to like give didactic to people who already have a sense of right and wrong on the subject matter. So I feel like this book could have been more subtle. I do kind of like the fact that it's like literary fiction and a thriller, but to be honest, guys, nothing thrilling has happened in the book yet. It's really just kind of like, I think this book, it happens in little epithets or little scenes. It happens in little scenes where it'll be like, okay, 5 days before the massacre, or 2 days before the massacre, or an hour before the massacre, or something like this. Detransition Baby also did that, and I'm discovering that I actually kind of like that when it's done well. When I was younger, I also used to hate the alternate timelines. But this book is not really too interesting to me. There's nothing that is super interesting to me. It kind of just feels like, you know how this year the thing with female books is everything is trad wife stuff, and it's like, I feel like people are jumping on the bandwagon to do popular or relevant 2026 subject matters, but they're not really about it. Or maybe these people who write these books are real feminists, but they're just too on the nose with the message that they're trying to say. And I don't really feel like there's too much interesting stuff that has happened so far. I do see that Jessica Knoll, if that's how you say her last name, I think she came out with another book this year. But usually what I like to do for authors who I don't really know too much about, I usually find them and I try to dive into their writing style or their vibe by the book that I find on a whim, or whichever one I feel like is going to be the most interesting. And if I really like their writing, or if I liked it enough, I will discover something else with them. Like I'm going to read Brandon Taylor's book Minor Black Figures next. I, for the most part, liked Filthy Animals, and I do want to read The Late Americans. So I've already tried Brandon Taylor, and I think I'm interested in what he has to say in his writing. And I feel like Brandon Taylor's a little bit more subtle than these other two authors that I'm doing in this vlog. Tori Peters' Detransition Baby was a lot to take in, but I'm interested in reading Stag Dance, maybe in the fall. I feel like that's going to be a really good one for the fall because it has lumberjack characters in the novella part. I'm interested in reading Stag Dance because I want to see if Tori Peters has any other nuances on like trans stories, because Reese in Detransition Baby was a very unlikable character, and I know she was supposed to be that way, but I just want to see if Tori Peters is like a one-trick pony, or if she has different ways that she can create characters and different dynamics, and if she explores like a pantheon on a particular group. But yeah, Bright Young Women is not really all that exciting for me. So I'm going to try to finish this book, tell you what I think about it overall, and then I'm going to move to the next one. So hypothetically, I might possibly get my caregiver paid tomorrow. I have to buy my phlebotomy application to get my license. But I really want to go to Barnes & Noble because I really haven't been feeling the best lately. But I listened to some chakra balancing music, like how I used to do all the time, and it raised my vibration. So I'm thinking tomorrow I want to get some of the books that I have in my TBR jar. So you might actually see the haul be posted before this video, because it's a lot of little videos that I'm adding together, a lot of pictures that I'm adding together. But hopefully I can do like a small haul. But at one point I do want to be financially stable enough to where I could just get everything that's on my TBR, that's in my TBR jars, before the 1st of next year, because I just want to get everything that's already on my TBR out of the way, and also so I could have a more interesting background and a fuller library. And then I think I want to basically only really do big hauls twice a year, like in the middle of the year and at the end of the year. But yeah, hopefully I can get a haul done pretty soon. So I'll check back with you guys maybe tomorrow or the next day, because I feel like I'm going to finish Bright Young Women pretty soon. Hey guys, so I actually didn't realize how late it was until my alarm went off. It's after 10 p.m. I kind of have a migraine that came out of nowhere, but I'm doing laundry and I didn't quite get to the 50% mark of minor black figures, but I'm almost there. As you can see, I'm about like maybe, I don't know, like this much would have been the middle. But I didn't want to look on the last page of the book because sometimes the last page does have like something that reveals the plot. But I went kind of towards the end and I see that there's at least like 360 something pages I just got on. I caught up all the way to 138. I think I was at 92 this morning, and I've been reading throughout the day. I kind of caught up to 138. So here's what I think about the book so far. So this book has some similarities to Brandon Taylor's other book, Filthy Animals. It stars our MC is a gay black man named Wyeth, and he shares an apartment. He's from New York. He shares an apartment with his other friends that are more than likely gay, but they are different ethnicities living in New York. But what they all have in common is that they're all artists. Some of his friends are sculptors. One of his friends does like social media art stuff, but all of them are artists in some way, shape, or form, and they all live together. So at the beginning of the book, Wyeth and his friends are kind of talking about how basically pretentious the art scene can be, and because this book is really modern, but it's taking place a few years back because it's talking a lot about coronavirus and a lot of Black Lives Matter and things like that. So it's modern, but it's not quite 2026, maybe a few years back, but it's not specifically pinpointing a year. I don't think it's just around that time. So they're talking about what's going on in the world and just wanting to be artists in the city. And so Wyeth's thing is, because of all the political stuff that's going on in the world, he doesn't want to be the type of black artist that puts nothing but trauma into their art, because he doesn't want to be seen like what he has to say isn't valuable unless it's about capitalizing on something that's happening right then and there. He just wants to create art that represents his life specifically, not what people think that black men should be like, or what people think that someone who is kind of leftist coded should be talking about all the time. So there's a lot of talk about this, that kind of stuff in the book, which I really like. But in the beginning of the book, Wyeth and his friends go to this art party, and I like the way how the scenery was described. But he's complaining about the art, and then eventually they end up at a club or something like that, and Wyeth meets this guy. I don't know why I'm forgetting his name because I have been physically reading it. Wyeth starts talking to this guy named Keating, and pretty much so far in the book is just basically talking about Wyeth and Keating's relationship growing, and they're having a lot of back and forth banter. There's a lot of didactic, but what I like about Brendan Taylor is his didactic is subtle yet very prosy, and he asks questions that allow you to think and to interpret things on your own. Like, he prompts the reader to, like, he'll picture a scene or a conversation, and he'll prompt the reader to think about it themselves, which is really nice. So it's pretty much like that's the only thing that's going on. It just hit me during the third book of this reading vlog that I decided to read literary fiction in the summer when everything's supposed to be on and popping. So it's taken me a very long time to get to page 138. At first, it's not like the writing was bad or boring, but it took me a while to get into it. And the past few days I have been reading big chunks throughout the day. So it's taken me a while to get to the halfway point, and I'll probably finish this
in between like 3 to 7 days, because I am a slow reader compared to other people that are on YouTube. That's just how I read. I like to digest the book. Um, is there anything else that I want to say about this? No, not really. I mean, I found 3 passages that really spoke to me, and I've been cleaning up my room and trying to organize stuff, so I actually used band aids and whatever I could grab. Like, I ripped up pieces of uh, lined notepad paper, just anything that I could use to hold my spot. But there are 3 chunks of paragraph that really spoke to me, just so you can get an idea of the conversations in this book and also how Brandon Taylor writes. But let me see, what was the paragraph that um, let me see. Okay, so I think this was a passage where Wyeth was talking about, maybe this was when he first started going out with Keating, and they walk outside of New York and they see like this group of homeless people at the park. So it says on page 61, starting in paragraph 2, the encampment across the street from the gallery was occupied by 3 or so men and a woman. The men were black, the woman was white. She had 5 dark tattoos on her legs that were hard to decipher at a distance, and Wyeth had never been close enough to really observe them. The men were all over 50. One of the men was incredibly skinny. All summer, Wyeth had seen the knobs of his spine and the sharp blades of his shoulders. He often lay sprawled on the ground even in the afternoon, shirt off, chest rattling up and down. Wyeth hadn't seen him for a couple of days. The other guy was a tall, friendly man with gray hair. His blue baseball cap had gone purple from the sun. Wyeth saw him as he arrived at the gallery. There were families going to the playground even though the weather was foul. Wyeth watched the moms and the nannies pushing the strollers, large, dark, terrifying things. SUVs with handles. A couple of the older kids, big enough to walk, strode confidently, proudly by their sides. The encampment had woken up already. They had put on their music, fast blues. Brassy voiced men singing about treating women right, the messiness of the human heart. The large man was clapping. Then he waved to the kids. One of the children waved back. The mother gripped the child's wrist and pulled him sharply along. Wyeth was struck by that bit of brutal education. He let himself into the gallery. Okay, so that was one. That was page 61. I remember that I did like that one, but there was another one somewhere around here. Okay, going back to page 60, the playground farther down the street near the Hudson was a site of contention because some of the unhoused had pitched tents and laid down pallets made from crushed cardboard and blankets in the entrance of abandoned storefronts area. Parents didn't like this and were in the process of evicting them. It seemed strange that the parents who did not own the storefronts and were making use of a public space, the playground, could feel so strongly entitled to the particular idea of safety that they could have more vulnerable people thrown out of yet another more or less public space, like a bad logic puzzle. But there was no trick to it, only selfishness dressed up with selective arguments, data, and money. Were there homeless people in the playground? Maybe, sometimes. Did they pose an ongoing threat to the children there? Or was a greater threat that the older kids, teens bored and off school for the summer, were running Adderall trafficking rings out of the playground? While taking in the mail for the gallery, Wyeth had seen the postcards sent out by a neighborhood committee organized around the project of making our streets safe again. So let's talk about page 61 first, because that's the one that I thought that I tabbed, because this is a library book, so I can't annotate or anything. I liked what really stuck out to me on page 61 with paragraph 2 and 3 was that little part at the end where it said one of the children waved at the homeless man and the mom grabbed the child's wrist. And it says Wyeth was struck by that bit of brutal education. So that's what I mean by saying things without saying things. So we have like this picture of a child being innocent and maybe possibly a homeless man innocently waving to a child, but then there's always like the implication of what that could mean. And we also see in that moment the mother's fright and the need to protect her child. So stuff like that is important to look out for in this book, because Wyeth is a painter, and his biggest thing is he wants to make it in the art world. He likes capturing moments that don't seem staged or aren't performative. So Wyeth is he's a he likes to watch people. I forgot what that's called, like a people gazer or a people watcher. He likes to people watch wherever he goes because he tries to find a muse or inspiration for his paintings. There's one part in the book where, Wyeth talks about how people expect him to do more black art, so he goes out to a park and he's trying to have a conversation with other black guys playing chess or something like that in the park, but it didn't feel natural because it wasn't something that he was used to. Wyeth is used to going to soirees, and he's a black man that likes to watch European films, and even though he's seen as whitewashed for that, that's Wyeth at the end of the day. So Wyeth's thing is, what can be more black than just a black person existing as themselves? Like, we don't have to always conform to everybody else's ideas of what we should act like. And Wyeth, like I said, as a painter, he really likes these random moments that have a lot of emotions and a lot of angles and expression to them in real life. So he's kind of on like this slow burn quest to find things to paint about that other people will get. Like, the bottom line is Wyeth wants to be understood. And then on page 60, I liked that second paragraph where it was talking about how like people were being Karens about how there's certain people that need to be out of the playground in order for it to be safe, but then those same proper nuclear families, those same conservative families are the ones that have kids that are selling Adderall. So it's kind of like this thing of the hypocrisy of being tough on crime when someone else is doing it, but when you are also breaking the law, but in a different way than like some people have the privilege of being able to get away with it. So I really like those two passages there. Okay, and then I have another band-aid in between 90 and 91. This is actually one of the beginning things that rumors about changing the selection committee rules, diversity quotas, but also equity quotas, representation benchmarks, but also not coming off as tokenizing. But also, no one wanted to admit that there was something quietly, weirdly essentialist in the contemporary framing of identity. It seemed silly to Wyeth that in order to rectify centuries of marginalization and abuse, predicated on a racist system that reduced all individuals to a set of crude characteristics, the contemporary liberal had turned to a racist system that reduced all individuals to a set of crude characteristics. I think I'm going to leave it there, but now I remember not foreplay, but the context of that paragraph is Wyatt is talking about how he likes to go to like a used bookstore, or I think it's like a famous bookstore in New York, and I think he actually used a real bookstore name. And it's like they were being performative by trying to have all these different sections for Dutch literature, Belgian or Dutch literature, German literature, Argentinian literature. And then he starts talking about how it looks like it's supposed to be diversity, but it's really segregating everybody. So there's hypocrisy with that. But also, he made a statement like, if there was an author of Czech descent that spent all their time living in America, they would be in the Czech section. But then an American that wrote mostly about Czech culture would be in the American section, about how like the identities are used to categorize people, but at the same time they make things more confusing sometimes. So that's a interesting paradox about labels. Sometimes they are helpful, sometimes they separate us more. And nowadays in media, when it comes to politics, a lot of conservatives talk about both sides of the argument, but it's really not listening to every side of the argument. Brandon Taylor is a black man, and I think he actually is gay. So there's a lot of, not that all of his writing is self-insert, but there's a lot of parallels to his life and what he writes about. And I definitely feel like the character Wyeth and even that character from Filthy Animals reminds me a lot of Brandon Taylor himself. But Brandon Taylor is really good with proving his point, but also seeing things from other points of view. So that's why I really like that. And also, by the way, I forgot to mention another like big component in the book so far is Mango Wave. So Mango Wave is this group of diverse New York artists that basically boomed because they talk a lot about their marginalizations. So what I said about Wyeth's friend group, Mango Wave is pretty much like the foil or the antithesis for that friend group, because it's what Wyeth and his friends would be like if they were to be big. But the thing that Wyeth kind of is frustrated about when it comes to Mango Wave is that they're very opposite in how they decide to do their work. Wyatt just wants to be an artist that just so happens to be black. Mango Wave, they're a group full of marginalized guys mostly who have made their art by being very preachy to their audience or being very on the nose with whatever's happening then and there, which is why they're circulating. So Mango Wave keeps coming in and out of the scenes and the chapters of this book to remind us of the parallels between Mango Wave and Wyeth. But I actually think that what happened is Wyeth got invited to a club, an after party, after the art show that takes place in chapter 2, and he went to the bathroom. When he got back, this dude Keating was there, and that's how he met Keating. So I kind of like that too, because it seemed like it was going to go in a very typical direction where, you know, Wyeth was going to end up being or trying to pursue the guy that originally invited him to the party, and I think that there might be a twist with that or something like that. But we end up like learning about Keating. I don't trust Keating all the way, but the conversations that him and Wyeth have together are pretty interesting. And there was one other passage. Okay, actually, I like, again, just like how I was looking at page 61 and then I looked on the other side and I saw like diagonally there were two paragraphs that I liked. So let's start with 126. So this is after Wyeth and Keating have sex for the first time. Then they start eating and they start talking about stuff again. So, and then Wyeth was like, this is a very interesting moment right here with the angles and the contrast and everything. Maybe I should take a picture here, but then again, I don't want to. And Wyeth says, like, if I wanted to take a picture of us two right here, right now, yeah. As I was taking it, I'd be like, why would I be doing this? Because I want to capture this moment, or because I want to signal to some hypocritical viewer that I've got a hot guy in my apartment, or because I'm hungry for validation from white men, and what would people perceive my motivation to be, you know? Those kinds of questions would haunt me, and so I maybe wouldn't take the picture of the two of us in this moment because I'd be too preoccupied thinking about the reception of the image and how it would play in the public, and how do you make art out of that? That's what Wyeth is saying. And this is only my second Brandon Taylor book, but based off of diving into real life and seeing the cover for the Late Americans, Brandon Taylor likes to talk a lot about queer black and white relations. And I have to admit, I had one thought that I did have, or I do always have reading his work, is why are his characters always trying to get the approval of white people? Like, it seems like Wyeth is almost very much so like the main character in most of the stories in Filthy Animals, where he doesn't really know what he stands for. He's very shy, kind of socially awkward when it comes to romance and sex, but he is around white people that he experiments with, and they experiment with him. So that's kind of something that Brandon Taylor, I noticed twice now that that's something that he writes a lot about. And even if that were true, I still like his writing because it's raw, and it doesn't really dive deep into the shadows of why people do what they do. His writing is always about people trying to figure out why they do what they do, and it's left open probably so us as the readers can decipher that ourselves. And then on page 127, YF says, when we look at someone beautiful, we do a lot of projecting. Like, there's this sense that beautiful people are filled with rich inner lives, or that their minds are turning elsewhere away from us. And so we're like racked with desire to be seen by them. But in fact, what you're seeing is the shadow of your own torment. Keating hummed loudly. Is that so? Yeah, every portrait of a beautiful person is always a portrait of a lonely person. The really interesting question is whether the lonely person is the model or the artist. And I feel like that sentiment is very true. And at some point he says, like, some people are beautiful, some people are hot, some people are, what was the other word that he used? Handsome. And he says that Keating is all of those things at once. He said that a hot person just makes you want to have sex with them. A handsome person, da 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 da. A beautiful person has a way of making you do things for them. And I think that sentiment that he said was so true. Like, sometimes people use those three words as a synonym, but the fact that when you're attractive, you can use that. Like, the world will treat you a certain way based off of what level or what type of attractive you are, and also you have power when you're attractive. Most of the time people who are attractive have power. But that's what I think of Minor Black Figures so far. I'm gonna try to finish it within 3 to 7 days and then wrap the video up. I have a lot of footage that I have to edit and speed up, so stay tuned for me to finish the vlog. So I finished Minor Black Figures by Brandon Taylor. This one I also had to finish on audiobook because I was getting bored, but I wanted to finish committing so I could post the vlog. And I didn't want to give up on this author because I did like Filthy Animals, I think last year. I thought it was a very interesting book. Just got out the shower and I made myself some iced matcha, even though it's in a mug. This is a new mug that I got from Target, which is one of my favorite places to shop ever. Also, I didn't put lotion on yet, so I'll probably be putting lotion on as I talk about this stuff. But so I have a few phone notes, not a lot, because towards the end of the book, there were some things that kind of stuck out to me. You know, this is literary fiction, so there's a lot of didactic stuff, whether subtle, whether on the nose. There's a lot of messages that are being put across. So I think the character Wyatt like had this monologue about how either like he said it or he was thinking it. Wyatt obviously is in love or is falling for Keating. He has a fling with Keating, who is a white guy who was supposed to be a priest. Like, he's a Jesuit, and I think a Jesuit is like a person that's in the training to be in ministry or something like that. But he's basically a closeted Jesuit. Keating is. So Wyatt, he makes it very clear in the book that he's attracted to white guys. And also, one thing that was very interesting to me is I noticed how later on in the book, Lionel from Filthy Animals, who was one of the main characters in that book, also came into the scene. And then we learned that Lionel and Wyatt had flings in the past too. So Brandon Taylor, I guess he's doing the Bret Easton Ellis thing where all of his books are different, but all of his characters are in the same world. I don't know if all of his books mention characters from previous books. I actually think Wyatt's friend group may be in different groups too. I haven't read any other Brandon Taylor books besides Filthy Animals, but I've read the synopses of some of his other books, and the names, now that I think about it, do sound a little bit familiar. But Wyeth had this monologue about how white people can only see, like, understand blackness when there's a white witness to what the black people are going to. And this is something that I've been talking about, like, for a long time on BookTube. I know some of you are like, where's the evidence, because I reset my channel, but this is what I was saying about how I'm not anti-white or anything like that, but I'm just saying, as a reader critiquing the publishing industry and how it pumps out the same narratives over and over again, especially since the Black Lives Matter hashtag recently, was created and started circulating, even though we're kind of, now it seems like we're more focused on ICE and Iran and stuff like that. But a few years ago, when that was circulating a lot, there were all kinds of books, YA books, literary fiction, whatever, that kept on putting, like, white love interest or a white villain or a white whatever. And it's like, I'm not saying that in order to have a POC story, all your characters need to be POC only, but it's like, we don't need the white straw man person to juxtapose the POC stuff in the book. And I'm glad that Brandon Taylor said that through his character Wyatt. And this book, it kind of is a both sides of the argument book, because there are a lot of characters who may have, like, liberal representations, but they believe in more conservative things. And it talks about, Brandon Taylor kind of talks through Wyeth in the book, like how he's tired of the one versus the other thing, and how people could be complex. Like, for example, Keating is a gay man, but he's also white, and he's also a pro-lifer. So it talks about how people have individual beliefs, but it's like they know what they believe in, and it's really about tolerance, and you can't force people to see things the way how you do, but you can at least show it for people and try to see things from their point of view, and, like, try to methodically understand them, which is interesting. And it sounds like, to people who don't believe that a utopian or a communist society where everybody can be equal and get along, they're like, okay, I know this is fiction, but how am I supposed to believe that that's a real thing? But that's how I live my life. I mean, I'm spiritual and I have family members that are Christian. It's like, okay, I believe what I believe. I don't expect you to be like me, and you believe what you believe. Like, we can coexist and we can have intellectual conversations and not have to make it a us versus them. So I kind of like how that was touched upon. And then there was another conversation about how, like, let's say even if there was, like, a underrated white, let's say, like, a classics author or a literary fiction author. Like, for example, when I heard that in the book, in the audiobook, I was thinking of people like Sylvia Plath, Joan Didion. At the time when they were alive, they were kind of a representation of sad white girls, or just people who felt like they were loners and they didn't belong in society. But it's like, there are so many girls nowadays that love the Bell Jar, that love Sylvia Plath, Virginia Woolf. So many girls nowadays that have kind of resurrected those type of energies in literature. And Wyeth basically had this conversation about how, even if white authors are underrated, or if they're niche, or if they have a very specific audience, they still have the privilege of being resurrected. When you are a minor black figure, or when you are a black artist who has that same storyline, it's kind of like, there are so many painters and sculptors and philosophers and everything, that mathematicians, so many different types of minor black figures in every field that you can think of. But of course, this book was talking about art. So let's focus on the art lens, where they were just as talented. I'm sure that there were some black painters who were just as talented as Van Gogh. There were some, I feel like Zora Neale Hurston is very underrated. I never hear anybody talk about her unless their school requires them to read women books or black books. But Zora Neale Hurston, for example, to me is a minor black figure. There are more books that are published in her name now that she's passed away. So there are a lot of people that are black all throughout history, and it's just not that. It's queer people, it's every other person of character who's a minor figure because they're not hyped as much as the other people who have the same stories. I'm pretty sure there are lots of black women who have stories like Sylvia Plath-esque. I didn't know that Passing was a classic book until like a couple years back. So that is a very important conversation to be had, and I really like it. One thing I do love about Brandon Taylor is his commentary, and he does slice of life books that are very slow paced, but he does them well. I do have to admit though, I was bored once I got to the 90 page mark, and because the book started to get very like predictable and repetitive with Keating. Like, I've seen this trope of like the broken black person or the broken queer person that is falling in love with the broken white person, but the white person is like still being put on a pedestal even though we have all these important conversations about blackness and certain marginalizations. And like I said, it's not anti-white. We don't need to force white characters into POC narratives, but we also don't need to necessarily leave them out 100%. So I had to switch gears and come back inside, but like I was saying, there were some really interesting conversations about how black people are always compared to other black people, especially when it comes to artistic spaces. And then there was a conversation about when it comes to like exploitation, particularly using things that happen to black people in the news in order to have a topic for your painting or for your book or whatever. It turns them more into a figure rather than a person, and it doesn't really humanize them, and it's not really about learning about their stories, but rather how you can capitalize on their representation. So I feel like the ending of Minor Black Figures was very similar to the ending for Detransition Baby, that so much of the book was focusing on trying to get various points across, very straightforward, and then the ending was kind of not really wrapped up, but that's okay because it's literary fiction slash contemporary, which captures real life, and oftentimes real life doesn't always have a solution or doesn't always wrap up nicely in a bow. However, I do feel like I don't want to spoil anything, but once we get to the part at the end of the book where Wyeth decides what he wants to paint and what he decides to call that painting, I didn't like it. I understand the point that he was making with the piece, which is ultimately what the whole entire book was about. I mean, the book is more, it's a character study more than talking about plot. Um, there is a little bit of character development, but I just felt like I did all of that reading and I got bored in some points just for it to kind of be underwhelming. So, okay, I think actually Detransition Baby, I think I gave like 3 stars. I DNF'd Young Bright Women because it was just super boring and I didn't like anything about the book. And then Minor Black Figures is probably going to be a 3 star for me as well too. I'm not sure if I should try other Brandon Taylor books. If I do, I'm probably going to have to look at the page count and then start with the shortest one rather than the one that I want to read the most, or consider both of those factors. I think maybe I'll like his short stories more than I like his longer novels, but I do like the way how he writes and I like the things that he writes about. But yeah, I'm not sure what I need to post next. I have a few videos that I've started, but I'm not sure if I'm going to post them or not. I've been buying books a little bit here, a little bit there, so I don't know if I should edit and post that collective haul. I'm also currently, I saw that I have three very popular audiobooks on my Hoopla app. So I want to do a vlog where I talk about A Court of Thorns and Roses, Fourth Wing, and Quicksilver as a non fantasy reader and just give my honest opinions about them. I started listening to Akatar. Um, I know for sure in September next month, I want to post more videos, but I also want to get more views and subscribers. I really want to try to hit that monetization mark before February 2027. So, what I'm going to do is reading extreme horror 30 days straight in September. I know I'm going back into extreme horror as an empath. It's not my favorite genre, but I am kind of in a reading slump, and there are pros and cons to extreme horror. One pro is that it is like it's very hard to get bored with extreme horror. Like even if you feel like it's over the top and that annoys you, you'll still want to read if you're not completely grossed out by anything. So even if it's just one chapter a day or a couple pages a day, I will just want to read a little bit of extreme horror for 30 days straight in September and post about it every day. And then I also want to do a video at the end of that, the pros and the cons of extreme horror. So even if I don't post anything else in September, that's my plan for September. I also have a few books that I have borrowed from the library and also books that I have read recently or I've bought recently that I'm thinking about reading. So I recently borrowed Bird Box from one of my local libraries. This one's kind of short, so I'm thinking about getting into this one tonight before bed. I recently bought Nothing Tastes as Good by Luke Dumas. This was a release this year that I was very excited about, and then I'm seeing all these blurbs on the back. When I went to Barnes and Noble yesterday, I think, the girl that helped me because I asked if she could point me to the large print section, she said that everybody's saying that this is a good book. So I was already like highly anticipating that, but now I'm really anticipating that. I also bought book 2 hardcover of Saga because I've already read volumes 1 through 3, and then I recently borrowed volume 4 from my library, and then I finished that. This one has 4, 5, and 6, and I need to read 5 and 6. Saga is super entertaining. It's one of like the most creative things that I've ever read before, and I usually flip through the Saga graphic novels pretty fastly, so that might even be something that I finish soon. And Saga is also like a series that I want to have on my channel. Like every time I finish one of the hardcover books, do my uh, feelings on that book. Being that I don't have a video for Saga Book 1 yet, I am going to be talking about books 1 and 2 at the same time. Also, I don't know if it already came through Amazon yet, but I'm supposed to be getting I'm a Fan today. My mom ordered it for me with some Amazon credit. And what else am I thinking about starting? I'm a Fan is pretty short too, so that's why I'm thinking about starting that one tonight if it comes tonight. And not sure if I want to do a separate video for Black Farm or if I want to include that in the extreme horror, so that might be coming soon. And I might also do like a video about how BookTube is about everything except for books now, or a tiny rant about how I don't like most of the books that you see at Target and Walmart, maybe an anti-TBR tag or something related to that. So that's all that I have for this video. I have other videos that you can watch posting on the tarot channel, and it's still gonna always be like that. I think so. Even on years when I post a lot, because it's a lot easier to pump out tarot videos, because that's something that's primary that I definitely want to monetize. And then the book reviews, yes, I want to monetize this channel too, but this is something that I do for leisure. So for this one, I do have the luxury of posting less because I don't want to overdo it with this channel, because I don't want something that I like to do as a hobby become a burden for me. Um, so yeah, I have a lot of video ideas. They're all going to be posted sooner or later. And then once I knock out all of the video ideas that I talked about, then I can work on the other ones that I have written in notes all over the place. I really There's things that I need to take care of, but I really just want to go ahead and buy all the books on my TBR and all the books that I've read that I already liked, because I need a background. I like the idea of shopping in your own library or looking in your own library. That way you don't have to worry about ordering books here and there. You got a background, you got a fully stocked library. You can just pick something off the shelf based off of how you feel about it. And also, I'm not like super afraid, but I have to be honest that with books being canceled and all this stuff coming out about AI, I think now is a time where people really need to just haul books, because you never know what's going to happen. And speaking of extreme horror, one thing that I'm noticing putting stuff in my Amazon cart, certain extreme horror authors like Ralph James White, Judith Sonnet, their stuff goes out of print very fast. So there are some books that are always going to be at Barnes and Noble, half price books, Blackwell's, whatever you like to use, thrift books. And then there are some books that just go out of print. So if it's like a quirky book, or if it's an indie publisher, I would just suggest you buy those books immediately, even if you're a person that likes to utilize your library. And sometimes people post audiobooks on YouTube even though they're not really supposed to, stuff like that. So if you like this video, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. If you want to see me talk about any of the other things that I talked about in this video, just stay tuned, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you for watching.